What happens when one man tries to watch all the horror films of the 1980s? Well, we're about to find out because I'm your host, Josh Spiegel, and this is the 80s Project. Welcome back to 1984, and yeah, we've kicked off the year, and this is such a full year of a lot of different crazy and over-the-top and really good horror. And yeah, this month is going to find us full of goodness, including the definitive ending of a horror legend. We're starting this block off with a run of a couple of films that have unconfirmed release dates. And this first one came out sometime in '84, and it's Black Devil Doll from Hell. It starts with a church sermon, and we're shot on that glorious video, and we're fully in the era of SOV films now, so just buckle up. The score is amazing because I'm assuming it's just like the demo button on a Casio keyboard from Radio Shack. We meet Helen Black, and she encounters a guy selling electronics out of the trunk of his car, but he also offers her a nice jacket, but she says no because stealing is against the Bible. You see, Helen is extremely religious and talks with her friend on the phone, saying that she's against sex and is waiting until marriage. She then goes on down to the little knick-knack shop in her town and finds this weird-looking doll. The woman that works there tells a story of it, but it's really hard to hear because the music is around 4 times louder than the dialogue.
Owner of this puppet was East Indian. It is believed that this puppet has very strange powers.
She says the doll always makes its way back to the store no matter how many times she sells it, so Helen takes it. She takes Tiny Rick James out, and right away, as she takes a shower, it opens its eyes and watches her, while I don't know, either she or the doll has a fantasy about the two of them in bed together. She starts to become obsessive about it, and then one night it jumps on her back and knocks her out and starts talking.
How do you like that, bitch?
He then ties her to the bed, and yeah, there's a puppet sex scene. And I kid you not, this goes on for a solid 5 minutes. This seems to unlock something in her as she becomes sex obsessed. But after it seems that only the doll will satisfy her, she must seek it out. Well, this slice of insanity is from Chester Novell Turner, and it was the first of 2 films that he would make. The second being the also bizarre Tales from the Quaded Zone. That film is an anthology, and it seems that it was his intention to make the Quaded Zone his first film, and this was only meant to be a segment featured there. But then he kept adding to the script and soon realized that it was too long and made it its own film. The budget was only $10,000, but keep in mind, Turner didn't have any film experience. He had to do a mail correspondence course in order to figure out how to get it done. He wanted to call it The Puppet, but was only able to get a distributor by changing the title to Black Devil Doll from Hell. It's said that the original version was also a whopping 140 minutes long, but the company trimmed it down by half and replaced the Casio score with metal tracks. It actually formed a pretty strong cult following, even if Turner himself never saw any money from it due to a crappy deal with the distribution company, and a remake was even made in 2007. And here's a wild story about the film. When the guy who plays the priest at the beginning found out about some of the context of the film, he asked to be removed, but he had already signed a likeness release, so Turner said no. The man then reported that the film was pornography and violated decency laws, and the police had to investigate, only to find that all of the documents and releases were in order. And this is bonkers. It's a 3. There's a weird low-budget trashy charm to it that I admire and enjoy, but not all that much. It's not one that I rewatch, but when I had to do so for this video, I didn't mind because I know that it's amusing. Its horror cultural significance is a 2, since it's still small potatoes in the horror world, but it did earn that cult cred and earned itself a remake. Should you watch it? Yeah, I'd play with this doll.
Getting ready to bust your cherry, baby.
Our next film is another one with a no known release date, but it did come out in '84, and let's check out Satan's Blade. It starts with a bank robbery in 1981 where 2 women working are shot and killed. The robbers then head up to the woods, and it's revealed to be 2 women, but one betrays the other one and kills her, although shortly after, an unseen person stabs her. The cops find the body and they contemplate closing off the cabins, but then don't, and a group of young folk check in. They're also told about a giant man and his family that used to live on the lands, and he was forced up into the mountains, so he fought back and asked the gods for help, and instead, evil spirits gave him some sort of weapon to kill anyone that trespassed. It's said that he killed his family and himself and still lurks up there as a dark presence. They opt to stay anyway, celebrating the fact that one of them passed the bar, and next door is a group of college girls. That night, one of them has a dream about this bird-faced man killing them all, but then they all go skiing.
Yeah, I hope it will be crowded today. Yeah, me too. Gee, I hope it's not crowded today. Yeah, me too.
Wow, she really hopes that. And so does the other girl. Stephanie flirts with Tony and tries to get him away from his wife, because this guy is just pure hunkorama, I suppose, but he remains true. As night falls, a mysterious man enters the college girls' cabin and murders them, with only Stephanie surviving. But is it that man from the legend? And how does this tie into that bank robbery? And this strange little flick is directed and co-written by L. Scott Castillo Jr., and is the only thing that he was involved with in the film industry whatsoever. If it looks like it's older than other films from this year, it's because it was shot back in 1980, but had a hard time finding distribution. Apparently, the only way that he could do this was landing a company that requested more death and nudity, so the opening scene with the bank robbery was added. The movie originally just began with the women arriving at the cabin. It was then put on VHS through a company called Prism in '84 and had a slightly larger release in '85 under a different brand, Galaxy Video, but neither release picked up much traction, and this became mostly forgotten until getting a Blu-ray re-release in 2015. And this is fair. I'll give it a 2.5 since it's amusing enough and doesn't feel like a total waste of time, but it's also a little slow in the middle and doesn't really do too much that's new or interesting. The HCS is just a 1 though, since it's very unknown and obscure, leaving next to no impact on the genre overall, and features no recognizable faces. Should you watch it? This is a little skippable, but it's okay, so if you dig odd slashers, it might be worth it. Here's our final entry on this block without a set release date, and it's just from sometime in '84, and it's Fatal Games. It opens with an awesome track.
Take it to the limit. Just give it all you gotta give, yeah.
And some gymnastics and swimming and sports, leading to a medal ceremony with a group that are moving on to the nationals. Seems that the group has been using some sort of steroid enhancers, and it's vital that they don't miss one. Later, after practice, they all go home, but one stays behind to lift weights and is killed by a tossed javelin. The use of drugs is questioned.
But the East Germans and the Russians are doing the same thing?
I'm not sure that that's a good group to be emulating, particularly in the early 80s. Shortly after, another member of the team falls victim to the hooded spearman, and the nurse on hand is actually Oscar-nominated Sally Kirkland, here softly caressing a naked woman on a massage table. It sure seems like that they want you to think that the killer is the team javelin tosser, but he goes down early and is taken out of the running. But It's not all stalking and killing because there's some drama that includes whether or not Phil's gonna go for baseball or gymnastics, and Fred's whoopsie daisy on the bars. But who is our killer here? And is it really as obvious as it seems like it is? And will the team make it to the Nationals? And just so you realize how committed that this killer is to their bit, they strap on scuba gear and enter the pool where a girl is practicing, hanging out underneath, and wait for her to swim overhead and then lunge upwards with the javelin. Now that's dedication. So this is directed by Michael Elliott, and it was his first and only film, and the only thing that he was involved with was doing script revisions on a crime film that was also from '84. Outside of Kirkland, there's a couple of other names involved, sort of. Early in the film, there's a shower scene, and if you squint really hard, you'll recognize Brinke Stevens back here. But that's not all. Remember I mentioned that nude massage earlier? Well, actress Lynn Banashek wasn't comfortable doing that, so they brought in a body double to be the butt on display, and that body belonged to Trash herself, Linnea Quigley. What's interesting is that this movie appears to be ripping off 1981's Graduation Day, since that movie also had an opening sports montage, a killer using sports equipment, scenes where the killer is crossing off victims from a photo, and also Linnea Quigley stepping in to be nude. It was shot under the title The Killing Touch, but ended up being released as both Fatal Games and Olympic Nightmare, although most of the cast were unaware of the title change and didn't even know that the film got released. The reviews were mostly negative, and it never really made a splash on the home market scene, only developing a small cult fan base over time. And this is alright, I'll give it a 2.5. It has fun moments and that classic slasher vibe, but it's just so damn predictable and spends too much time in the middle portion with dullness. The HCS is just a 1.5 since it's still obscure and mainly just cribs off of another slasher flick, but it does have those handful of horror links to boost it to 0.5. Should you watch it? You can. It's not really essential, but it's alright. Now we're back to entries with official dates, and this one dropped on March 9th, and it seems like it was a single city release, and it's The Spirits of Jupiter. It looks like that this version is an uncut version that wasn't allowed to be showed back in the day, and is said to be the true vision of the producers. Seems there was alignment of planets on Earth. There's this guy named Big Jim Driller, and he operates a mine in the mountains, and he gets word that a bunch of miners went nuts. This is pretty wild though. They take out one with a shotgun, and then this other one is holding a hostage by the neck. He has no weapon, he just has his hands on her neck, and when her father shows up, he lets her go. Like, he willingly lets her go, and the second that she's clear, they shoot him about 20 times. Even more hilariously, when he's still not dead and reaches a hand up like, what the hell, guys? They shoot him again! The news reports that there's been an uptick in violent acts all over, and this guy says that Nostradamus predicted that a planetary alignment would cause great chaos. But I guess that they're not talking about that Nostradamus, and mean this one instead. And the mine gets shut down, and they say that all the other miners have left and are all sick. A group of them try to attack Big Jim, so he straight up kills one with a forklift, and we see around the town that everyone just starts going crazy and attacking everyone else. And even animals are affected. And then, in the middle of the movie, there's just this random title track song.
And suddenly I heard someone call me by name. There they stood, the spirits of Jupiter.
And pretty soon, it's just total pandemonium. It's then up to Big Jim to find his family and survive the alignment. And this one's from a guy named Russell Kern, and was his first directed gig, and he'd only do one other film, a drama, in 1992. Clearly taking some inspiration from The Crazies, this one was made in Colorado on a pretty low budget, but not too low considering all the airplane and helicopter action sequences. And in regard to that message on the film in the beginning, the original cut of this one was around an hour and 47 minutes long and only existed on VHS, never getting a DVD or Blu-ray release. Eventually, Kern took the film, remastered it, and re-edited it, cutting out over 20 minutes of footage, landing it a new release. And this one's at 2.5. It's fun at times, but it's mostly too drawn out. I'm sure that the 80-minute version is snappier and quicker, but I watched the longer version in the end, which may have been the wrong choice. The HCS is just a 1 because it's practically a complete unknown film with no real names to draw you in. Should you watch it? Maybe not. It's fairly skippable, but it's definitely not a chore.
Robert?
This next one was a judgment call because it says it played the Miami Film Festival at some point in February, but it had a confirmed date of March 27th when it played in other festivals, so I'm going to go with that date for The Enchanted. Mr. Sumatra is here, and while out hunting with his dog, spots a group of rags-clad people in an old trailer. Later on, he meets up with Royce, the son of an old friend, and he's returning from sailing around the world on a freighter. He moves into his old family ranch, which is now deserted, and the next day he sees that weird family, and Booker says to not ask questions, and that they're just there to work. They're the Perdries, and Royce tells them that they can work there, but there's something else lurking on the land, killing animals. Royce gets flirty with Twyla, the oldest daughter of the group, which worries Booker. She paints on her walls seem to show her family history, while Royce integrates back into their little community. They think that a wolf is responsible for killing the calves, and it soon becomes apparent that the Perdries may have more to do with this than expected. And this practically unknown little film is from Carter Lloyd, and was the first film that he directed. And he only did one more after this, and that wouldn't be until 2004, taking a 20-year break from filmmaking. It looks like he started making this one in 1979, but it took 4 years to complete, and then he had trouble finding any sort of release path, so it only played a couple of festivals and random screenings. But then it was sold off to CBS and aired as a movie of the week, but didn't get much in the way of airings before just vanishing altogether. It's not credited as such, but it also seems to be an adaptation of a book from 1951 called The Enchanted, An Incredible Tale, part of a series that all told about the Perdrie family. IMDb lists the budget here at around $1.2 million, and there's no way to know if that's accurate, but it seems right. It remained mostly unseen, but now has been released as part of a Blu-ray box set of folk horror. And I liked this one enough to give it a 3. Honestly, it's mostly dull, and there's not really much of a plot or story, but the atmosphere is great, and I did enjoy the mood that it was laying down. Its significance is just a 1 though, since it's almost lost, hardly playing anywhere, and doesn't feature anyone of note outside of Julius Harris. Should you watch it? I'd say yes, but just because it's so unseen that it's nice to put eyes on something this obscure. Let's get a little bit sillier now and go to March 30th for this one that also debuted sometime in March in the UK, and it's Bloodbath at the House of Death. It begins in 1975 at Headstone Manor, and a group of robed men go in and massacre everyone there, and the police arrive, and it's clear that this is meant to be a comedy since it's throwing out a bunch of gags. 18 people were killed, and it then jumps ahead to present day, and a bunch of scientists are headed to the house, and one of them might try to bone Superman. And one's an Avenger. Everyone in the village has this weird symbol tattooed on them, and then there's this blind guy here. And this is weird. This is Graham Stark, and he's also in Superman 3, in a scene where he crosses paths with Pamela Stevenson, and he also plays a blind man there. Eventually, they all meet up at the manor and they plan to dispel the dark rumors of the house, and they find a music box that depicts the earlier murders. And then Vincent freaking Price is here in this red outfit as a Satan worshiper. Each of the science team has their own secret past, including a pretty crazy can opener death and even an alien parody. And it seems as if they're trying to raise an ancient demon, but things don't go according to plan.
What the devil was that?
Sounds like a lot of monks exploding.
It was directed and co-written by Ray Cameron and was the only feature film that he directed. He was mostly known as a writer and teamed up a lot with Kenny Everett, who was a zany radio personality in the UK and plays Dr. Mandeville here. He was rather well known overseas, but not so much in the US, so whereas he was featured in most of the marketing over there, in the US everything was much more centered on Vincent Price. Everett was known for saying off-color and controversial things, but stirred up a bit too much right before this one was released. He was at a Young Conservatives conference and shouted out, "Let's bomb Russia," and other things, and there was a bunch of negative media about it leading up to the film's debut. It wasn't that terribly successful, but did develop a nice-sized cult following, and remains known as one of the few films in which you can hear Price use a 4-letter word. And this is a 3. It's decent. Most of the humor didn't work for me, but there was some parts that really did, and every time that Price was on screen, it was a joy. The HCS is a 2, since it's not that well known here, but has Price and some other faces that you'll recognize. Should you watch it? Yeah, I'd do it. Price is in it, and perhaps you'll find it funnier than I did.
And you tell me to piss off? You piss off.
Let's move on to April now, and this next one came out sometime in April, although the exact date is unknown, and it's Tales of the Third Dimension. It starts with a skeleton that sounds suspiciously like Rod Serling, although his name is Igor, and he's accompanied by several wisecracking vultures. He points right at us, and I'll talk about that shortly, but he says that he's going to tell us a couple of stories, and begins with one at an adoption agency, and they go out to meet some clients. They live in a big old spooky house and talk like classic Lugosi vamps, and they want to adopt a child. And they already have a trio of kids. But when their new ward arrives, they're told that he was a problem child. But it seems like there's more to him than meets the eye. The second story is called The Guardian and starts with a funeral, and after it's over, the gravediggers meet up and they decide to steal the jewels from the woman that was buried. They opt to up the ante and go down into the catacombs to plunder, but it seems like they've bitten off more than they can chew, and someone else might be doing the biting. The third and final story is called Visions of Sugar Plums, and it's set around Christmas time with the family going to visit grandma's. And this classy dad who literally takes off his belt to beat a child while driving a car and almost killing everyone else, because I guess sometimes child abuse just can't wait. Granny's a sweet and kindly old lady in a wheelchair, but also seems to have a screw loose and maybe harboring a deadly secret herself. So this is called Tales from the Third Dimension because it was originally presented in 3D form. And there's a decent amount of stuff poking directly towards the camera, which made me wish that I could watch it with the 3D intact. Each segment had its own director, and one was Todd Durham, who only directed part of this and a movie we'll talk about a little later this year on a sci-fi project called Hyperspace. He then took a huge gap and only showed up again in 2012, where he was the writer and creator of the Hotel Transylvania series. The second director was Worth Keeper, who would go on to do a bunch of the Power Rangers episode, and the third was Tom McIntyre, and he would only direct one action movie after this. But the wraparound stuff with Igor was by Earl Owensby, and he was the head of his own little studio called EO Studios, and he produced several things that we've already had on the project, like A Day of Judgment and Rottweiler. There's not much information about this one out there concerning the method of release or how well it did or anything, but suffice it to say that it didn't seem to make that much money and didn't really have much of a life in the aftermarkets. And this is a 3, and that rating is for the wraparounds and the last segment. If the third segment of this movie existed on its own, I'd actually give it a higher score because it's an absolute blast. But the first 2 segments, they're duds. But give me that crazy grandma any day. The significance is just a 1 though, because this is really unknown and there's no one in here you know, and no one's heard of this. Should you watch it? You should absolutely watch that third segment. You could probably skip the others, but segment 3 is a must watch. Real quick, we're going to make a little stop onto the small screen because this next one first aired on April 8th, and it's Calendar Girl Murders. It kicks off with a variety of models, including Commander Ivanova, and it's a bunch of girls that appeared in something called Paradise Magazine, and they want the police to help protect them. One of them is Captain Dallas.
You're depressed, you just turned 40, you feel you lost a few steps.
I don't want to hear that.
I mean, Scarrett was over 50 by this point, but I'll give him 40s. Raoul is here too, and Lieutenant Stoner is assigned to the job. His kid sneaks watching this, which is basically just a new wave dance show, and they call it filthy adult entertainment. And like, what? Rip Taylor pops in, and I love Rip Taylor, famous for basically just being Rip Taylor. That night, when one of the girls goes up to her hotel room, someone enters and pushes a dummy off of a balcony, or I guess her. The man managing the Calendar Girl shoot is Agent Maxwell, and the photographer is Dr. Seaver, and the killer takes out Kara via knife next. They talk to an ex-model, and he asks her some questions, and she doesn't cross her legs, because after all, this is a TV movie. Stoner investigates at a party where this stellar dance happens, the second best set of moves that we're going to see on this block. Then the killer starts working his way through the calendar, but Cassie and Dan become friends, or more than friends, even though he's married. And as I mentioned, this is a TV movie that aired on ABC, and it was directed by William Graham. He was an extremely prolific director in both TV and film since 1958, although this is his first appearance on the project, as he didn't do much with horror at all. But I have featured one of his earlier TV movies, Shark Kill, on a list of Jaws ripoffs. This particular film was clearly a little bit influenced by the slasher films of the era, even if that genre was fading fast. And it was still pretty early for Sharon Stone, but even earlier for Claudia Christian, since it was her first film, even if it were for television. It's notable because it seems like it might have been a script meant for a theatrical release and then put on TV without changing the dialogue, so comments about a filthy TV broadcast are just people dancing, and discussion about a big orgy party turns out to just be like a fancy cocktail gala. Talk about one of the models stripping down and being lewd for a photographer are basic, wholesome photos in an everyday outfit. It seems like it didn't make a lot of waves, but it did have decent write-ups at the time. And I'll go 2.5 on it. It's amusing enough, and Scarrett's a lot of fun, as is most of the cast, but it's mostly cliche stuff that you've seen all before. But at least they're making it entertaining. The HCS is just a 1.5 since it's not that well known, but it does have a nice amount of players in it that you'll recognize. Should you watch it? Maybe. If this sounds interesting, then put it on your calendar. This block ends in the biggest way that I know how, because on April 13th, a major saga comes to a definitive ending with Friday the 13th, the final chapter. It picks up right where the last one left off, with Jason dead on the ground in a barn, so it's picking up within hours of that one ending, and they haul him off to the morgue since they pronounce him dead. They get there, and I've seen it said that this is supposed to be Chris and her parents, but since they didn't have the actress from the previous film, they don't show her face. But the director says on the commentary that she's not meant to be, and is just a random other person to create the ambiance that it's a real hospital. As expected, our big guy isn't dead and starts doing his thing, and we bounce up to the lake where we meet the Jarvis family, including Mom, daughter, and little Teddy Duchamp. They say that the cabin next door has been rented out to a bunch of kids, and we meet them, and one is Reuben Farr. They pass a tombstone for Pamela Voorhees, and it's one that kicks off the film's timeline because it says that she died in 1979, which is always a point of contention because it's generally thought that the first film took place in 1980 since that's when it was released. We see that Jason is on his way back up to the woods, killing as he goes, and oh yeah, Hilly is here too. And little Tommy spies on her and reacts in a really normal way. The next day, they meet a random hiker named Rob, and the others party, which leads to one of the greatest cinematic dance scenes of all time. Like you know it's coming, and here it is. But of course, then the murder begins. And you know, for all the talk of all the horrible deaths in this series, why does everyone just sort of gloss over the spear gun into the penis and then hoisting into the air? Like, what did this guy in particular do to deserve this? Did Jason see him there and was just like, yeah, you right there. I'm not going with the old machete through the chest or axe to the head. No, for you, random man I hate for no reason at all, you're getting the ball spear lift. And yeah, then he just silently and sneakily takes them out, one by one, including Matthew Starr, but not Gordon, because that good boy lives, following the formula of the previous 3 films. But this one changes things up when it gets to the final act, because this one's called The Final Chapter, and it seems like Jason might not actually be walking away from this one. And that was sort of the point. You see, Frank Mancuso Jr., series producer, felt like the franchise was losing him respect, since it was seen as a lowbrow bunch of films, and he no longer wanted to be associated with it. And his answer was to end the series by killing off Voorhees. He hired Joe Zito based on his success with The Prowler, and they paid him to write and direct. However, since Zito wasn't really a writer, he paid off Barney Cohen to do it. Zito is also the one who reached out to Tom Savini, who worked on the first film, to come back to the franchise in order to kill off Jason in a glorious fashion, something Savini was thrilled to do. The budget was $2.2 million, the same amount that the third film was made for, and it was a rush job. It was originally meant to be released in October, but they pushed up the date to April, so they had no prep or pre-production time. Filming went smoothly enough, and it was hyped up pretty strongly as the grand finale. It opened up pretty big, hitting #1 at the box office with an $11 million weekend, although it didn't really have any competition, as the #2 film was the original Police Academy in its 4th week of release. And what's wild is that 1 week later, Police Academy knocked Final Chapter out of the top spot to reclaim that #1 position, which is pretty crazy, and I bet you didn't know what a juggernaut that Mahoney and the Clan actually were. Of course, the reviews were rough, and most just called it a rehash of all the others, and it made less money than Part 3 did, although it was still one hell of a profit since it earned $33 million. Paramount was pretty shocked at its success, considering the slasher genre was waning by the point, but they figured that since they called it The Final Chapter, they'd have to stay true to it and not make any more, and they held to their promise, limiting this franchise to a mere 4 entries, and Jason was never heard from again. And there'll be no more reason for me to discuss the Friday the 13th films in the 80s project whatsoever. Seems like a shame, really. It feels like this could have gone on for at least 6 or 7 more films.
Hey Ted, where's that corkscrew, that fancy corkscrew for the wine bottle? Ted?
And let's give this sucker a 4. This is most likely the best of the franchise and features the most memorable characters all around, the best Jason, interesting kills, and yeah, it's the formula at its finest, but I'm not going to give it any higher because it's still the formula. There's no way to escape that the whole first hour of this one is just the same as the previous 3, and sure, it's a better version of the whole thing, but that holds it back ever so slightly for me. The horror cultural significance is a 4, and it's another one that I want to place higher, but a lot of the series' impact had already been laid down, and this entry doesn't do much new with it, even Jason's look, but killing him off gives it some edge, and the fact that it's become one of the most notorious in the series run gets it up to that 4. Should you watch it? Absolutely. It's your chance to watch the last movie ever to feature Jason Voorhees, since they never made any more of them because this was the final chapter. So there you have it, getting firmly into 1984, and it's already off to a pretty big start. We've already had a Friday the 13th, and later this year we're actually going to get some other big franchises, so stay tuned for that. My favorite of this block was the final chapter. It's not my favorite Friday film, but it is really pretty damn good, and my favorite of this block. Let me know down below in the comments what is your favorite here. Let me know which of these you've seen, which you haven't seen, and which you would now like to see down in the comments. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to get notified when new videos come up. And check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines and help support this channel and keep the project going. And it's going to keep on going because we've just started with 1984. There's still quite a bit of ways to go. And we're going to plug on through it right here on the 80s Project.